I call Kelvin Davis.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, I'd like to agree with what my colleague Carmel Cipollone has outlined in terms of cultural safety, in terms of the Criminal Investigation Bodily Samples Amendment Bill. It's really important, I think, that people understand the Māori perspective on this, the collection of bodily samples.
Simon doesn't understand it. That's
and I want to make it clear that I support legislation that makes it easier for us to identify and apprehend offenders. I think that DNA is the new fingerprint, and it's going to be very useful in doing just that, apprehending offenders. Again, I just think that we need to be mindful of the cultural side of things, and I just want to use 3 examples from my own background to illustrate how Māori feel about bodily samples. And some people may think I'm being a bit silly about this, but they're very real to Māori. And the first one is a very simple example. At our family homestead in the Sleepy Hollow of Taumarere, there's a plum tree that it produces the greatest plums, except nobody's allowed to eat them. The reason being is that traditionally that's where my grandfather, great-grandfather, or my great-great-uncles, they have their hair cut, and it would be under that plum tree that the hair was buried. And because of that, the hair was is treated as being tapu, as Carmel Cipollone said, and was buried under that plum tree. And so nobody was allowed to go near that plum tree or touch the plums. Another example is cutting of fingernails, or any other sort of, what's the word? Bodily, intimate articles that belong to a person. It doesn't have to just be bodily samples. It could be your possessions that are intimate to you or close to you, that if somebody was able to get hold of them, then they could actually do some sort of harm to you. And in Māori terms, we call it a makutu. So we're always mindful that when you cut your hair or cut your fingernails, that you are never to just dispose of them where people could get hold of them in case they got hold of them and created some harm to you. And this is the basis around why Māori are particularly concerned about what happens to bodily samples such as DNA. Let me just make it clear, I believe that if someone's guilty and their DNA taken from them, bodily samples, then quite frankly I'm quite glad that that's happening, and I'm not precious about it at all, because we do have to make sure that that New Zealand is a safe place. We need to be able to identify and apprehend offenders, but we do just need to be cognizant of the cultural aspect of taking body parts or body samples from off people, Māori in particular, and Pacific Islanders in particular. Another example I'd like to use is when earlier this year, in fact it was about 6 weeks ago, a baby passed away, and there was an autopsy, and the body parts weren't. The samples were very small, about the size of the fingernail taken of the organs, and yet they weren't returned in a culturally appropriate way to the family, and it caused a lot of angst. The coroner had a heck of a lot of explaining to do, and the coroner, being Māori, actually had spent a lot of time and effort in actually trying to make sure that the processes that the coronial services went through were culturally sensitive. However, they were let down at this stage, at this time, and a lot of rebuilding had to be done. So it's just an example, small examples of how when we take bodily samples from people, that we have to actually treat those samples in a cultural way, but in a culturally sensitive way. But I do really want to express my belief that this is going to be good for New Zealand. It's going to help apprehend offenders, identify them, and that is a good thing for New Zealand. So I do support this. The Labour Party does support this. It's just really important as I say, that the Māori perspective, the Māori aspect is taken into account.
Chair.